the final exam review. All right, let's get started. Okay, so our first question says that we have a computer that is programmed to simulate rolling 2 dice while keeping track of how many rolls were required to get an even total. And at the end of the simulation, the program produced the following table to show how often each number of rolls was needed to achieve the desired result. So according to this table, what is the probability that it will take exactly 3 rolls to get an even number with 2 dice? So we want to know exactly 3, right? So if I look at my table here where 3 is, it looks like it took 20 times out of that total 100 to roll this. And then don't forget we want to simplify. And if you want some help simplifying your fractions, you can just type them into Desmos. Right? And if I were to hit this, it would simplify it for me to give me 1/5. Alright, next one. So here, Virginia placed 30 marbles in a bag, of which 7 marbles are yellow, 4 are orange, 5 are blue, 8 are green, and 6 are red. We want to click and drag the letters onto the probability scale in the order that the likelihood of that event is going to happen. So I put these blue boxes here because when you get to this question on your final, they will be in the same spots. And I think the easiest way to do this is just to go through each of these and count how many of those marbles are in the bag. So the first one has red and orange. So if I look up here, there are 4 orange and 6 red. So 4 orange, 6 red. And then the next one says that there are red, so we have that 6 for red. Then we have green. If I look up top, there are 8 green, and then we have yellow. And if I look, there are 7 yellow. And then we have yellow or red. So there are 7 yellow and 6 red. For orange, there are 4 orange. Blue, we have 5, and red, we have 6. And for the very last one, E, so green, let's see, how many green do we have? We have 8 green. For blue, we have 5 blue. And for red, there are 6 red. Okay, so now looking at these numbers here, we want to put them in order essentially from the smallest number to the biggest number. So you could go through and add all of these together, or you can just kind of look at the numbers that you have. So looks like 4 and 6 would be the smallest, so A would be the most unlikely. The next one would be C with 7 and 6. Then when I'm looking at these 3 here, D is going to be the next smallest one because these 3 numbers are smallest. Then we have E, and then last but not least is going to be B. Okay, so again, I just went in order from least to greatest, and if you wanted to add all of these together because it helps you see just one number instead of the list, you can do that too. Alright, next question. So we want to know which one of these correctly adds negative 57 and negative 23. Well, there's a shortcut. Instead of having to look at all of these, notice how every single answer that I'm given is different. Whoops. Right? This is different, this is different. These are all different numbers. So let's just pop this into a calculator and see what number we would get. Okay, so I'm adding together negative 57 plus negative 23. When I add them together, I get negative 80. So that means that negative 80 is going to be the right answer. And I don't even have to look at any of the stuff that they're doing here because I just know that I'm looking for a negative 80. Alright, next one. So we want to know which one correctly divides negative 108 by 4. So again with this one, we can do it the way we did the other one. However, we have to be careful because now we have 2 of each, right? I have 2 negative 27s and 2 negative 23s. However, typing it into a calculator will cancel out 2 of those. So negative 108 divided by 4 gives me negative 27. So I know that this negative 23 and this negative 23 cannot be right. Okay, so now let's look at the second step here. So if I look at these second steps, negative 25.2 negative 25 minus 2 and negative 25 plus 2. Only one of those will give us the right answer, so let's work out both of them. So negative 25 minus 2 and negative 25 plus 2. See how this negative 25 minus 2 gives me that negative 27? So that tells me that C is going to be correct because this second step is what gets me to this answer here. All right. Next one, we want to know which tree diagram shows all the possible outcomes of the following event. We are going to be spinning a spinner with 4 sections and then flipping a coin. Okay, so the first thing that we're doing is spinning a spinner with 4 sections. So that means the first option that we have from our starting point is going to be either getting 1, 2, 3, or 4. So these two, this H and A, are out. Okay, so C and B are still in because I can roll a 1, 2, 3, or 4 from my starting point, which is right here. And on this one, my starting point is in the center and I'm branching outward. So I could spin 1, 2, 3, or 4. Then the next thing I'm doing is flipping a coin. And this is where B tells us that B is correct here, because if I were to spin a 1, when I flip my coin, I could land on heads or tails. And if I were to spin a 2, I could land on heads or tails. Versus C is telling me if I spin a 1, the only thing I'm going to get when I flip my coin is heads, which isn't true because I could get tails. So that is why that spinner, the circular one, is correct. All right, next question. So on this one here, we have this box plot, and the lengths are randomly of randomly selected groups. Which statement best supports these box plots? So notice how B has a much wider box than A. Okay, so we are talking about variability, and when you're looking at box plots with variability, whichever box has a longer box, that one will have more variability. So up here, see how B's box itself is longer than the box for A? That means that B is going to have a greater variability. So the lengths of group B have a greater variability because this box up here is longer and wider than box A for group A. Alright, so Ms. Serio asked 4 students how to find the perimeter of a rectangle where L is the length and W is the width. The answers are below. Which could not find the perimeter of a rectangle? Well, think about when you're finding the perimeter of a rectangle, right? Here's my width, here's my length. I'm going to add L plus W plus L plus W all together. So with that being said, this one works and this one also works. When we look at these two on the bottom, if I were to distribute, I would have 2L plus 2W, which is the same. So that means that this one down here would not be correct. If I have 2L minus 2W, that is not the same as adding. Okay, when we're doing these, when we're solving for perimeter, we are always adding. Okay, we are never multiplying, we are never subtracting or anything. So we're always going to be adding. Alright, we want to know which graph shows the solution to this inequality. So we have 2/3 x plus 1 is greater than 2. So I'm going to rewrite that over here so I have some room to solve it. Remember, always start furthest away from your variable. So let's subtract 1 from both sides. I will get 2/3 x is greater than 1. And then what I want to do here is divide by 2/3 to get rid of this. And then let me pull open my calculator. So if I were to type that into my calculator, 1 divided by 2/3, I would get 1.5. Okay, so again, don't forget that when you get to this step, type it into a calculator and see what you get. Okay, and 1 divided by 2/3 gives me 1.5. So if I look at these graphs, you have to look carefully. notice how here I have a 1 and my 2 is all the way over here. That means that this is going by 0.5. So this would be 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.82. We don't want that one. This is the one that we want because there's one little tick mark in between the 1 and the 2, which means this would be 1.5 or 1.5, which is what we got for our answer. Alright, next one. So we want to know which length finds the segment of MN. Okay, so remember that when you're finding distance, you always need to have your absolute value signs, and it is going to be A minus B, or in this case, it's going to be M minus N. Okay, so I'm going to have -5 minus 2.5. So -5 minus 2.5 in those absolute value signs. Don't forget those. So we want to know which is true based off the proportional relationship below. Okay, so A says that 10 gallons of water is used in 3 minutes. So gallons of water is represented here on this axis, and time in minutes is represented on the bottom. So if I were to go over to 3 minutes, which would be here, and go up, this dot tells me that it takes 15 gallons. So not true. So let's check the second one. The second one says 3 gallons of water are used in 10 minutes. So for 3 gallons of water, that'd probably be somewhere around here, which would go down here, and that's way too tiny, right? That does not make sense. So not B. 20 gallons of water are used in 10 minutes. So 20 gallons of water going down, that's used in 4 minutes, so that one's not correct, which means it should be D, but let's double check. So if I have 10 gallons of water, that is used in, I think this one up here should have been 2. 10 gallons of water would be used in 2 minutes. Okay, so you always want to just double check. On your exam, you won't have a typo. I made a typo when making this. That was my mistake. I apologize. So the number of tickets sold for an upcoming concert is 5 times the number W of tickets sold for the last concert. Which equation represents the situation? Okay, well, the number of tickets U that is being sold, so U is our total. And if you remember anything from when we were writing and solving equations, your total should always go by itself, okay, which means that D is not right because W is by itself. See how on all these I have U by myself? That's what I'm looking for. Then it says that it is 5 times the number. So 5 times would be multiplication. So I would want U is equal to 5W because 5 is being multiplied to W. Alright, Irene bought 1/3 of a pound of Kona coffee and 1/2 of a pound of flavored coffee. How much money did she spend? So here we have all of the price per pounds, and we know how many pounds of each one that Irene bought. So for the first one, for Kona coffee is $22.60. I'm going to multiply that by 1/3. And then for the next one, which is flavored coffee, she got 1/2 of a pound, and flavored coffee is $13.40. So I'm going to take $13.40 and multiply it by 1/2. Then when I multiply both of these numbers, I'm going to add them together. So I have 22.60 times 1/3, and then I have 13.40 times 1/2. Then I'm going to take those numbers and add them together. So 6.7 plus 7.53. And when I add them together, I get $14.23, which means she spent $14.23 on coffee. Okay, so on this problem, all you want to do is take the amount of pounds that she bought of that type and multiply it by how much it is. Then don't forget to add them together. Alright, Stacy here is planning a skating party for her best friend. The total cost for each person is $15, and the admission is $3. The skate rentals and refreshments cost the same. Solving which equation will find the cost of skate rentals and refreshments? Okay, well, she's paying $15 per person, right? So 15 is going to be her total. So since 15 is the total, that means A and B here are out because I need to have 15 by itself. Okay, when you are paying $3 per person, that is a charge that you are paying, right? That's not money that they're giving you to go to their skate park. That is something that you have to pay them. So because of that, that is being added into our total. And with skates and refreshments, since they cost the same, that would be 2x. So that x represents skate rentals and refreshments. And since there are 2, we have 2 times x plus 3, which would give us that total of $15 that Stacy has to pay for each person that goes. All right, so this box plot represents weights of tomatoes harvested by 2 growers based on the graph, which is true. So when we are looking at these answer choices here, we are seeing which is more likely to grow. Right? Grower B was more likely than mower grow to have more tomatoes. So we're looking at weights here, okay? And if I look, this box for grower A is kind of in between. It's a little bit less than 4, but it never gets to 5, right? However, but box B is way over here in between this 4.8 and this 5.2. So grower B looks like the weight of their tomatoes is actually much higher than grower A because their box plot is over here. It's located on this side, where these tomatoes are bigger because they weigh more. So grower B is more likely than grower A to have tomatoes weighing 4.5 or more ounces because majority of these tomatoes here are bigger than 4.5 ounces. A cereal company's breakfast bars have 170% as much protein as they do sugar, which equation represents the relationship between the bar's protein content and their sugar content. So since they have 170% more, 170%, if you have 100%, that is the same as 1. And since we have that extra 70%, that would be 1.7. So the correct equation here would be P equals 1.7. And if you wanted to see why that works, if you were to take your percent, which is 170, and divide it by 100, we would get 1.7. Next one, so we want to know which represents the area of finding this figure. Okay, so first thing that we want to do here is cut this into 2. Okay, so we have a triangle and we have a rectangle. On this side here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And up here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Which means this is 4 here. And if I were to count up, that is also 4. So for my rectangle, I want 10 times 4. So this one's out. For my area of my triangle, remember that area of a triangle, the formula for that is 1/2 base times height. So this one is out because it doesn't have that 1/2. And this one is also out because it's 10 times 2. I want 10 times 4 plus that 1/2 times 4 times 4. Which expression is equivalent to this weird looking fraction here? For this one, it's super easy. Type it into a calculator. I'm going to hit the fraction button first, and then I'm going to type in 2 over 9 in the top, and then go to the bottom and do 13 over 15. Click this to change it into a fraction for me, and I get 10 over 39. I don't know what I did with the answer choices here. I think I was messing with it, and I might have accidentally changed one of the numbers incorrectly. But on your exam, when you get to this problem, just type it into a calculator, and when you do that, you will get the right answer that pops up. I apologize. I think the 13 should have been a 12. But again, this is just an example. You can do it the same way on your exam, just with the different numbers in the calculator. Alrighty, Helen was trying to find the area of the figure below by splitting the shape into parallelograms and triangles. And is her method correct? Okay, so let's see. So it looks like she did 9 times 7. Let's see, she's doing 9 times 7. Where's this 7 coming from? This 7 here, see how the 7 is on the slant? That means it's a slant height. We would never use that. So, no, just because this 7 here is a slant height, this side right here, and we never use that when finding area. So no, because she used the slanted side instead of the height of the parallelogram. And the actual height she should have used should have been 5, because 5 goes straight up and down. Alright, next one. So Bryn here knows that she will have to pay 8% sales tax when buying a mattress. To find how much she will have to pay, she adds M to the price of the mattress to an 8% of M as shown below, which would be this equation here. So this is what Bryn used to figure out how much she'd have to pay for her mattress. We want to know what's another way that she could find the total of the cost after tax. Okay, well think about it. You are paying for your mattress, which is 1. Okay, so 1 counts as your mattress, and then you're paying this 8% sales tax. If I were to take 8% and change it into a decimal, 8 divided by 100 would give me 0.08. So if I have 1 plus 0.08, I would then get 1.08. So this 1.08 M is another equation that she could use to find the price of her mattress after tax. Right, a triangular prism is being cut along the dotted lines. Which shape will be formed from the cut that we see? Okay, so think about kind of what's happening here. If I were to have this triangular figure and I cut one of the edges off, when I cut that edge off, I'm going to get this rectangle here, right? If I were to cut the edge off, I would have a much tinier triangular prism like this, okay? And this rectangle base that we see here, that is the shape that I would get when I slice that corner off. So it would be a triangle. Sorry, it would be a rectangle. Alright, which arcs connect the numbers with the greatest sum? So if I have -1 plus 0, that gives me -1. 0 plus -3 is -3. -3 plus 2 is -1. 2 plus -1 is 1. So 1 is the biggest number because everything else is negative. So A would have the biggest sum. And if you were unsure of your addition rules with integers, please type those into a calculator. Okay, you can double check your math calculations with the calculator on any number. Alright, so what does the ordered pair 1, 16 indicate in the table below? So it looks like when number of video games. So if I'm getting one video game, I'm going to have to pay $16. So $16 will buy me one video game. $16 will buy me one video game. Letta is going to toss 2 dice at one time. What is the probability she will get a 2 and then a 6? Sorry, 2 and then a 5. So probability of getting a 2, and then I'm going to multiply that by the probability of getting a 5, because this word and in the middle tells me that I need to multiply. So probability of rolling a 2 is 1 out of 6. Probability of rolling a 5 is 1 out of 6. When I multiply them together, I get 1 out of 36. So she would have a 1 out of 36 chance of rolling a 2 and then a 5. Which represents the area of the figure. So here what we want to do is make 2 boxes. On this top box I have 1, 2, 3, 4 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On this bottom one I have 3 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 4 times 5 plus 7 times 3. Which describes the new surface that is created by slicing the cube along the dotted line. Okay, well it looks like we're cutting it in half, right? So when I slice this in half diagonally, you can kind of see here that it's going to form a rectangle, right? If I were to outline this shape, you can clearly see that it is a rectangle. So it's a rectangle, but not a square. Which situation matches the inequality below? So it looks like 150 is going to be greater than 6x. Okay, so whatever I am multiplying 6 of, that has to be less than $150. So A says that if a x centimeter rubber band is stretched 6 times its length, then it will be longer than 150. This one is not correct because it's saying that it's going to be longer than 150, but we need it to be less than 150 because 150 is the biggest number we can have because of this inequality sign here. For B, it says that if less than $150 will be spent on burgers for a party, then X $6 burgers can be purchased. That works because it has this word less than, right? If less than 150 will be spent on burgers for a party, then this amount of $6 burgers can be purchased. What is the correct solution for the inequality? So when I have a negative 12x is greater than 98, I'm going to divide both sides by this negative 12. Now, when you are dividing by negative 12, anytime you have an inequality and you are dividing by a negative, you must flip your sign. Okay, so on this problem here, you need to flip your sign. Okay, so when I do that, this inequality sign that is facing this way will now be flipped the other way, and this will give me negative 9. So please do not forget you must flip your inequality sign. And for this one, please double check your math using a calculator. Okay, don't make a silly mistake. Don't forget a negative. 598 divided by negative 12. Oh, that should be a 108, shouldn't it? It should be 108. 108 divided by negative 12 would give me 9. My apologies. I was very close, right? 108. Okay. Jeremy had $9,000 in his savings account, earning simple interest at a rate of 5% per year. How much money did he earn in interest in 1 year? So for this problem here, all we need to do is take that $9,000 and multiply it by 5%. But before you multiply it, you must change 5% to a decimal. Okay, and so $9,000 is going to be multiplied by 0.05. Don't forget this extra 0 after the decimal. Okay, that makes a very big difference. And then once I have converted it to a decimal, I can multiply them. So 9,000 times 0.05 gives me 450. So he will earn $450 in his savings account at the end of that 1 year. Alright, so Bob has this shirt that he is going to buy, and it's originally priced for $20. We want to know what is the percentage that the shirt is marked down. So the shirt's originally the shirt's originally 20 and it's on sale for 15. We want to know what is the percentage of that the shirt is marked down. Okay, so there's a few different ways that you could do this problem. You can work backwards and take your percents and multiply it by the original. However, that takes some kind of guessing and checking. The other way we could do this is do 20 minus our 15 divided by 20. So what we're doing here is original price minus the new price, all divided by the original. Okay, and we can type this into Desmos exactly the way we see it. If I hit that fraction button first, I can do 20 minus 15 and divide that by 20. And when we do that, I get this 0.25. And if I multiply it by 100, I will get the percentage that it is off, which is 25. Okay, so I got 0.25 and I need to take that, multiply it by 100 to give me 25%. So that means that the shirt that Bob bought was 25% off. Alright, so we want to know which division problem results in a terminating decimal. So a terminating decimal is one that ends, meaning it does not repeat. Okay, so we are looking for one that ends. On this one here, it's very easy to do this one with a calculator. So I'm just going to start typing all of these in. Alright, so I've typed in all of them. And if I look here, notice how for these bottom three, this 6 is repeating and then it rounds off at 7. Since the 6 is repeating for all of these, that means that all of these are repeating decimals. However, this very top one, where I have 0.25 and then it ends, and there's no more numbers aside from those two, that tells me that 4 divided by 16 gives me a terminating decimal. So on this one, 4 divided by 16 is my terminating decimal. Next question wants to know what is the quotient of negative 96 divided by negative 2. So again, type this into a calculator. Okay, be very careful with your signs. So negative 96 is being divided by negative 2. When I type that in, I get a positive 48. Okay, so positive 48. Alright, the next one says that the price of a jacket, J, the price of a jacket was J. So J is how much this jacket cost, and Aiden paid 6.4% in tax when he bought the jacket. To find the price, he added 6.4% of J to J. This is sounding weird in the way that they're saying it. We want to know what's another way he could find the total cost. So what he did was he took the price of his jacket, which is J, and added it to 6.4% times J. And when we are doing this, keep in mind that you should always change your percents to a decimal when you're working with them in an expression or an equation. So 6.4% as a decimal is 0.064. Okay, do not forget the extra 0. If you need to, type in 6.4 divided by 100 into a calculator to double check. And then we have J. Now whenever we have just a variable, there's always an invisible 1 attached to it. So it's kind of like I have 1 plus 0.064, which gives me 1.064J. So 1.064J is going to give me another way that I could find the total cost of this jacket after tax. Alright, so we want to know which of the following is equivalent to the equation below. So if we have 13 minus 13, that equals x. Well, let's think about what is 13 minus 13. 13 minus 13 is going to give me 0, right? So that means x is 0. So when I look through all of these, I can type each one of these into a calculator and see which one gives me a total of 0, and that is going to be the answer that I choose. So give me 1 second to get that calculator back. So let's type all these in. Remember, we are looking for 0. So 13 plus 13, negative 13 plus negative 13, 13 plus negative 13, negative 13 minus 13. See how this one here, 13 plus negative 13, is the only one that gives me 0? That tells me that 13 plus negative 13 is equivalent because they both equal 0. Michelle, Lori, and Patty buy lunch together. The bill total was $65. If Michelle pays 35% of the total bill and Lori pays 48% of the total bill, how much of the total bill was paid by Patty? Okay, so the first thing I want to do here is take 35 and add it to 48. So 35 plus 48 is going to give me 83. And again, if you can't do that in your head, that's fine. I would double check this on a calculator if I was taking this exam because I don't want to make a silly number mistake. So it is 83. So now what I want to do is take this 83, because this is 83%. This is how much of the bill is being paid. And that means that Patty has to pay the rest. right? So 100% minus 83% will give me 17%. Okay, so Patty is paying 17% of the bill. The next thing we want to do here is take the bill total. So we're going to take the total and we are going to multiply it by the percent that Patty has to pay, which is this 17. So $65 times 17%. But remember, you need to change this percent to a decimal. Okay, so I'm going to have 65 times 0.17. Oops. And if you want to double check your percent to a decimal, again, all you need to do is type 17 and divide it by 100. So take 65 times 17, whoops, 0.17. And we find out that Patty will have to pay $11.05. Alright, the temperature of a sample in an experiment was measured at 20 degrees Celsius with the relative error of 0.5%. Which equation is a correct representation of the measurement in degrees Celsius? Okay, so let's see, we have this experiment that was measured at 20 degrees Celsius with a relative error of 0.5. Okay, so that's a pretty small error. And with relative errors, you are going to have a plus or minus, which is what those symbols are in between. That means I can either add or subtract. And 2.5 and 1 are way too big. Okay, a 0.5% error is very tiny. Okay, and if I were to take 0.5, and remember this is a percent, and I were to multiply it by 20, don't forget this percent needs to change to a decimal. This is where dividing by 100 is going to help you, okay, because this is 0.005. Okay, so don't forget those extra zeros. I can't tell you how many mistakes I see because people forget zeros or they don't convert correctly. And if we were to type that into a calculator, which I can pull up right here, so we have 20 times 0.005, we get 0.1. Which tells me that the representation of the relative error that I would use here would be 20 plus or minus 0.1. Alright, and that is all that I have. That is all 35 questions of similar examples. Okay, on your final, if you take it and would like to retake it, there is a copy located in the course. Okay, you only have to complete the copy if you would like to raise or retake your final exam grade. Okay, it won't pop up immediately. I have to go in and override it. However, if you have questions on that, or if you have questions on any of the other questions in the actual exam, please let me know. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this course, and if I don't talk to you until the end, I hope you have an amazing restful summer.